This is Smithy.tv.
Richard, thank you for taking time to meet with me. Richard Hatch from Battlestar Galactica. I wanted to ask you, I was curious, we were standing and we wanted to ask you real quick, the two characters that you played on both Battlestar Galacticas, Captain Apollo and Tom Zarek, were there one that you more related to on a personal level than the other?
Yeah. I mean, I actually related very much to Apollo back in the day, and I related very much to Tom Zarek and recently because, you know, I'm kind of a provocateur. I teach, I lecture, I speak all over the country, and the biggest thing I deal with is really just to shake people up, wake them up, get them stepping out of the box, seeing the larger picture, making up their own mind about things, instead of just buying into sound bites or what somebody taught them to believe, is that people don't really think things through. They don't really educate or inform themselves about things, and they vote blind, and they make decisions blindly. And all through history, people that stood against tyrants, dictators, were considered the bad guy because they were challenging government. And as much as people were unhappy, they were scared and threatened by somebody who had the balls to stand up and challenge the government. And so they turned away.
And they were eliminated.
Exactly, and they allowed these people that did have the courage to stand up to go to prison, be tortured, be burned at the stake, whatever happened to them. And then, as they always say, history is written by the victor, and history is also an interpretation, right? Because we don't know exactly what happened or didn't happen. It's always somebody's interpretation. And I don't know about you, if you've ever had 10 people in a line take one line of dialogue and repeat it and go down the line, by the time it ends up at the 10th person, it's a totally different sentence.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't trust history. I love history, but I don't trust it. I'm sure it was much different than what people say. But anyway, I'm very much like, I would have to say, Tom Zarek, because for me, it's amazing to me that when anybody would ever call him a bad guy, when he was the one guy that challenged the government, that was actually, as well-intentioned as they were, did a lot of bad things, and they usurped the one thing that everybody should have been fighting and standing up for, which is democracy, building consensus, is that no one man knows what's right for everybody. And that's what the difference is between a dictatorship and a democracy. And yet everybody assumed, well, it's Adama and Rosalind, so they're the good guys. Anybody who challenges them must be the bad guy. And so I thought it's so interesting, because people through history buy into what people tell them to think. Because that's the easy way to live life, right?
Can I ask you a question about going back in time?
Does that sound a little bit like Tom Zarek?
No, absolutely. If you
By
could,
the way, vote for me or else.
running for president. If you could go back in time and play your Apollo character over again, would you do anything different? I mean, do you feel like you've gained wisdom as an actor, as a performer?
If you played him now, he would be written differently. I mean, the way I write him in my books is different than is written in the series. Back in the day, they didn't go too deep, didn't get too into the core story, didn't really, I think, develop characters in a more multi-layered, complex way. Although, you know, I really did like Apollo. I thought he was a true leader. He honestly was the guy that would watch your back, the guy that would be there, the guy that had integrity, the guy that was willing to lay his life on the line, right? So, I mean, he was a very honorable character.
Yeah, but also a little bit of comedy relief as well. Don't forget that the show was also, it made me laugh as a young man. And
well, again, like I said, I think, you know, and today we deal with more real issues. We get into the core subject matter. But humor is something that should come out of drama, come out of the story. It shouldn't just be jokes or funny to be funny. Even comedy to me needs to be anchored by a good story. And that's my favorite, probably my favorite genre is, you know, what we call dramedies, which is a blend of drama and comedy. So anyway, what were we going to say?
No, I was just going to ask you, on the way over here, we were in the shuttle bus together, and you were telling me about how you do these conventions all over the world. Do you find the fan base different in different parts of the world in terms of North American fans of pop culture? Are they a little bit different in New Zealand, Australia?
I think we fans are from the same ilk. I think we've all been assimilated and therefore we share more in common than we don't. When you have a love of culture, of geek culture, of sci-fi, fantasy, anime, comic books, I think we all have so much in common that we really share. Really, we have so much to talk about and so much to relate to, and so it's like one big family.
Can I ask you
Yeah.
what makes you a geek? What gets?
Well, I've always loved. First of all, I've always loved the sciences. I love quantum physics. I love trying to understand how this world, universe operates, how things were created. I love the history of science. I love where science is going. Science is prophetic, and great science fiction writers are prophetic. They peer into the future. They have a window into the future, and they blend what I call the science of the future with the humanity of the future. Who will we be? Who are we? Where are we evolving to? So it's not just about, machines and technology. It's also about I think, the exploration of the human heart. It's a wonderful blend.
Do you have confidence that humanity is smart enough to handle the technology that we're developing today and down the road?
Well, I would say that we are second grade, first grade, dealing with technology that can absolutely destroy the world.
Are we a kid playing with fire?
We're a kid playing with fire, and I would only say that I happen to think that, like quantum physics actually is delving into, there are multiple realities and multiple possibilities, and there could be multiple variations of this world, right?
Yep.
There could be multiple versions of you, of me. So there's probably, just like a game, a digital game, when you create an avatar and you experience a reality in a world, right? Like the Matrix. God knows, maybe there's multiple outcomes. Maybe in one outcome we destroy ourselves. Maybe in another outcome we don't. Maybe in another outcome we have to destroy ourselves, and then we come back and we learn our lessons. God knows all the probabilities that might be explored, right? Who knows? Yep. But the truth is, we're focused in this one, for want of a better word, and I happen to believe in, if you want to call it, at the end of the day, as much as we screw things up, as much as we get lost, very much like the Americans who have to get their ass kicked before they wake up, and then once they wake up, watch out,
Yep.
because they're a lethal force once Americans come together and support whatever journey we've decided on. And I think the Japanese found that out in World War II.
Are we going to be able to do that again with ISIS, though?
Well, I think the ISIS thing is like anything else. If you want to use the metaphor like a virus in the body, okay? When the immune system is weak, viruses will proliferate, right? So if you could look at ISIS as, in a sense, the world is unfocused. There is a lot of change and shifting in so many different ways that we are not as cohesive a society as maybe we once were. It leaves an opening, right, for outside influences to gain root. And I just think that ISIS is kind of a, if you want to call it, I don't look at it as a negative thing. I think it's something that is going to mobilize that part of the world,
right,
to come together and realize what kind of a world do they want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a sense, we can't be the caretakers of the world. And we're kind of in a very challenging situation because we don't want to put boots on the ground. We don't want to go back in there because we've learned one thing. We can wage a long, never-ending war. And at one point or other, we will have to leave. Mm-hmm. Or we will have expended so much money that people will be so upset and we'll have to pull back. Mm-hmm. And like what's happening now, we end up losing tons of equipment because the very people themselves who are not used to taking care of business themselves are always waiting for America to come in and save them.
That's true.
So you find a lot of people have not been motivated to stand up and come together on their own for all the right reasons and to decide what kind of a world they want in that part of the world, mm-hmm. in the Muslim world. And I think that they're going to have to be pushed to the wall, and ISIS is going to do that, mm-hmm. because they're motivated, and I hate to say it, they may or may not be motivated, for the same reasons that are explained, but I learned that everything serves a purpose in life. So the people in the Muslim world, if you want to gain together and say, this is not the world we want, what ISIS wants to create, then we have to stand up and come together and create the Muslim world that we believe in. I believe in all religions. I believe there's multiple ways of looking at God, looking at the universe. I don't know ISIS, who they really are, or what their background is. So I don't want to be in judgment of anybody, but I do know that they are going to challenge the Middle East to either stand up and say this is not the direction we want to go in, or ISIS is going to dominate and that's going to become their world. And then they're going to have to manage, run, and become a government.
They have, and they've started to do that.
So that's what they'll have to do. And the truth of it is, I think, in a sense, we should worry more about, in a sense, I think, protecting America.
Yeah, your own backyard.
And because the minute we go in other countries, we're the bad guy.
Right.
We're the invader.
Yeah.
And I think that we've done that over and over again. And you know something? America needs to get its own act straight and work out what democracy really is, and build a fairer playing field, and build a world here that maybe will inspire other people to say, we want that form of government. I think we need to clean up our own act and stop trying to get other people to follow our direction. You know, nobody wants someone to come in and tell you what to do. There's many ways to live. Who says whose form of government is ultimately the best? I think it's time to stop trying to impose our way of life on other people. Let them decide their own lives, right? And I think America would be far more honored and loved if we stopped intervening and trying to in the name of doing something good. But unfortunately, there's always multiple objectives and multiple reasons why people do everything, right? But I just think that we should allow countries to resolve their own issues and problems. And if they are standing up and coming together and actually doing something, we can support them. But if they're not interested enough to stand up for themselves, then we shouldn't go in there and risk our lives, our money, our equipment. That's like taking somebody who's an alcoholic and is not willing to face their issues, get into a program, even though it's offered to them. You can't help somebody who's not ready to help themselves. And so if countries are not really willing to help themselves for real, how can we really help them? We're going to waste all that energy. All that stuff goes down the drain, which is what it's doing right now. They haven't been pushed far enough to make a decision about what they want over there. And I think there's a lot of different factions of Muslims, and they all have to decide what works for them. But I honestly think America needs to tend to its own backyard and let the rest of the world tend to its backyard. I really do.
Richard, you give me more than a minute of your time. I appreciate that. I just want you to have a great time in Niagara Falls. Thank you for coming to Niagara Falls Comic-Con.
Thank you.
If there's one last question I have for you, if there was one thing that you wanted to know before it's your time to depart the world, what would the answer to the question that you have most in your mind?
I would really like to know if... No, I don't want to be funny. I'm not,
no, go ahead.
I'm not going to go there. No,
I want to ask people questions that they've never heard before. So I'm asking you a question that I think you've never heard before.
Well,
What's the one answer to the question in your mind that's been...
It's really funny because, I mean, I don't... Okay, how about this? I would like to know if Amy Adams met me 20 years ago, would she have fallen in love with me? And did she watch me back when I was on All My Children in Battlestar and have fantasies about me? That's what I want to know.
We can find that out for you.
And if not her, Kate Beckinsale, even Meg Ryan, I would go for. Renee Zellweger, what else? God, there's so many.
There are so many. So little
yes.
time.
Well, the thought always is, because we never know. When they were teenagers, did they fall in love with us when we were on television? Because we were known back then, they weren't.
Yeah, that's true.
So they might have had a huge crush. And now they're out there and they're successful and doing all these wonderful things, you know. And I look at their stuff and I go, oh my God, I'm in love with Amy Adams. But for all I know, she could have been in love with me.
Who knows?
Who knows? I may never know.
I like that answer.
Yeah.
I like that answer. Richard, thank you so much.
Okay.
That's a